Hello, my name is Maggie Goldman. I'm going to try and explain to you how floating exemption works, and so you can decide whether or not appealing will be worth it for you, considering you may not get as much of a refund as you may have expected. So here is a Roswell example. I think it's just a little bigger for you guys. Okay. All right, so floating exemption. So basically, the way that this law works is that Fulton County, the Fulton County schools, and your city are all legally not allowed to bill you on more than an approximate 3% increase over the prior year, regardless of the value increase. So you can see here how this property went from 609 to 1.2 million, which likely is not true. And we may appeal that just because it's atrocious, but I want you to be, I want you to have a good expectation of what you'll get back in return. Last year we did a Sandy Springs appeal where they got a good reduction, and she literally got like $3 back because all that impacted her was the Fulton bond. All of the rest of the entities were entitled to their 3%. And so we want to make sure you're clear about what you'll get back. Okay, so to demonstrate this floating exemption, I'm going to show you here this Fulton operating. Here's the floating exemption. This basically takes what it would have been, which is that 243, which is the fair market value. 40% of that is this. This is what it starts at. And this floating exemption changes to make this number equal what 3% increase should be. So these should be a 3% increase over the prior year in 2021. And I'm going to show you, so the Fulton operating last year was at 1,676. And this year it's at 182. So see how there's a big homestead exemption there to sort of make up the difference between 448, 484, and what it should be, which is 182. Here, the Fulton schools started at 208, and it is now 214. And so here's the big floating exemption to bring 484 down to 214. And up here, I just did some math that shows you that the 146 to the 182 was only an increase of 3.5. And you can see that the tax billable amount went from 1,563 to 1,618. So that was maybe, it was like less than $100 increase. Here we've got the Fulton schools. Going from 208 to 214 was a 3% increase. And you can see from the 3586, it went up to 3694, which is just about $100 increase. Those two increases are baked in. Like an appeal or a freeze, it's not going to change those numbers. Those entities are entitled to that money regardless. The only thing that would change is this Fulton bonds. Okay, so that doesn't have a homestead exemption. But it is pretty cheap. So it went from, I think, $48 here to $96 here. So if this value went down, it probably wouldn't go down to what it was last year. But I mean, maybe there's, 10 or 20 or $30 that could be saved there. The Roswell portion, so this is kind of sad that the Fulton County assessor includes Roswell without a homestead exemption, but because Roswell bills their own taxes, they handle the homestead exemption for that. So all the county can do is put in what the normal assessed value would be plus last year's millage rates. And so what I'm telling you is if you look at your Roswell tax bill from last year, I'm going to show you how to do that. If you, I'm already on the page, but Is this it? Yeah, I'm already on the page, but I'll include this link when I send this video out. So if you go to this Roswell City of Roswell property taxes and you pretend like you're paying online, there won't be a bill here to pay. So then you can type in your the number on your assessment notice, the parcel ID. And you do have to fill it out exactly the way this is. So the 2 numbers space dash 4 numbers dash 4, you fill it out that way. And then you'll be able to search and show your it'll show you your 2022 Roswell tax bill. So your 2023 Roswell tax bill should look very similar. You can see there's a floating exemption here for $33,000. So that 243 gets reduced by this 33,000 and comes out to 210. I put that math here, and then I actually did the math of 210 times the millage rate to see if that came out to the right number. This millage rate calculation is confusing. I just wouldn't worry about that. But basically, it's this rate minus this rate equals this rate. And so it ends up being this 1817 minus 900 is one number, plus the $24 for the bond is 940. So 940 is what they paid in Roswell taxes last year. And so all I did was I took a 210 increase of 3% to 216 and multiplied that by, for now, last year's millage rate. The millage rates are not set yet, but that's all we have to estimate with this last year's. So that would be 943 instead of the 2,112 that's listed up here. You do still have to account for the fact that the Roswell bond that you guys approved last year has not been included in this yet. And we don't know what the cost on that is going to be exactly. So all I can do is estimate the current Roswell bond that's on here. So the only things that would be impacted by a reduction or a freeze are bonds, Fulton bonds, Roswell bonds. So this current one I'm estimating to be at 848, at 484 times what is now this millage rate, which is $48. I expect that the next one will be a little bit more substantial than that, but I still expect it to be in the couple $100 range. So this person has the potential to save on a Fulton bond, which is $96, and the Roswell bond, which could be a couple $100. You have to decide if that is enough worth it to you to file an appeal and get it frozen or get a reduction. I'm certainly not discouraging you from doing that, but I just want you to be aware that you are not likely going to save like thousands of dollars. And I wanted to explain how the Roswell will have homestead exemption, and that is just not listed on here. I'm going to go to Alpharetta next because they have the similar city situation. So in this tax bill, you can see the value went from 672 to 738. And you can see that there's a floating exemption here last year in 22 to bring that 268 down to 224 and 219. And that these can only increase about 3% for 2023. And so the 224 has gone to 232 and the 219 has gone to 225. I did some math up here. You can see that's an increase of 3.4% and 3%. The only thing that would not change here is the Fulton bond. So this was at the full 268 last year, and it was $53. And here the Fulton bonds are the 295, the full amount without homestead, and it's $59. So that was literally an increase of like $7. Let's see. So the Alpharetta is not listed on here with a homestead exemption because they do their own billing. So this $1,400 number is not likely to be correct. You can find your Alpharetta tax bill I will send you this link as well. You would just pretend you're making a payment here, and you would go to the real estate section. And then here is easier. You can put in your house number and street name. You can put in your parcel ID. You won't have a bill number, so that would be irrelevant. And I didn't even bother with texture. I literally just put in house number and just the street name without the street or road. Search for it, and you should be able to get your 2022 tax bill for Alpharetta. So here, I don't fully understand what they're doing with this homestead exemption calculations here, but the point is to show you that they are crediting some floating homestead exemptions. And then this is the number that they actually billed out last year, 176, 114. And so my expectation is that that would increase potentially to something like 181, 397. That will be multiplied by the millage rate. Right now, they're using last year's as an example. And so that estimate is 867 and not 1412. The value reduction or freeze will only impact, in this case, the Fulton bond and the Alpharetta bond. So here, the current Alpharetta bond would be likely 295, 224, which is what the current for without homestead exemption is, multiplied by the last rate, 284. So it would go from 259 to 284. So this tax bill does not stand to save. I wouldn't even say you could save. I mean, it would be very difficult to save money on this one, let's put it this way. That does not mean you cannot appeal. It does not mean that you cannot get it frozen. It will save you some money, but I would not expect even, I mean, $50 might be generous to save on this tax bill. So just want you to be open-minded about what that might look like. I'm going to go up to Johns Creek. Okay, so Johns Creek and Sandy Springs are a little bit easier because they do, the Fulton County does collect for Johns Creek and Sandy Springs, and so therefore the homestead exemptions are included. But I will show you that this has the floating exemption section, and these are what the values were for 2022, and I'm going to show you how they changed for 2023. So even though my bill, this is my bill, went from 650 to 829, that seems like a fairly big jump, but I'm not paying that much more. So my 230, which was the Fulton operating value from last year, only went up to 238, and that was only an increase of 3.6. And my Fulton Schools General, which was 258 last year, only went up to 266. And so that was an increase of 3.2. And I only went from like $2,040 to $2,114, like a barely $100 difference. And for the school taxes, I went from 4,447 to 4,593, which might be a little bit more than $100. But either way, those two are baked in, right? Like if you get a reduction or freeze, the municipalities are still entitled to that 3%. That is not going to change no matter what you do. My Johns Creek went from 245 to 253. And that was a change of from 976 to 1,010. So that was, I don't know, like $40. Those are going to happen regardless. If you made a reduction or a freeze, it would only impact the Fulton bonds and the Johns Creek bonds. So here it looks like my Fulton bond last year was $52 and my Fulton bonds this year is $66. And my Johns Creek bond last year was $101 and my Johns Creek bond this year would be $129. So those are the only two that potentially could stand to be reduced if I got my value lowered or frozen for the future. that doesn't really seem like something I'm gonna appeal, because I want to go through the process with everybody. I want to see when they're sending out letters. I want to see what the letters look like, etc. But normally I would not recommend that this person appeal if they were interested in getting a reduction. Okay, let's see, let's do Sandy Springs. So we have here, same situation. They do collect for, Fulton County collects for Sandy Springs, so they're on there. Here I have the floating exemptions from the 2022 bill. And actually, let me show you, I guess I should have shown you that at the beginning. You can find your 2022 bills by going to the Fulton County assessors, and I'll have this link in there as well. When you do a property search, I'll do mine just as an example. Everybody knows where I live. When you come all the way down to the bottom, so here's where you can find a copy of your 2023 assessment notice if you, for some reason, don't have it still. And you go to tax bill information, and you type in their little captcha thingy. And so this is showing our tax bills from through 2016. So if you just click on the 2022 one, it'll show you the exact amounts, and you can compare what your previous assessment notice amount was with the current one. So I should have done that earlier, but that's how you can find that. So this is the Sandy Springs one. Okay, so it went from Fulton operating at 391 to Fulton operating of 403, for an increase of 3.2%. And the taxable amount went from 3470 to 3582. The schools went from 301 to 310, and that amount was 5,193 to 5,350. Those are going to happen regardless. The only thing you could impact with a freeze or a reduction would be the Fulton bond, which here looks like was 86, and here is $101. And then Sandy Springs, it looks like was 406 last year and is only going up to 418. And that number is 1921 to 1981 for amount of taxes. So those are going to happen regardless. The only thing you can save on your Sandy Springs tax bill is on the Fulton bond. Everything else is guaranteed a 3% increase for those taxing entities. So if you're into Sandy Springs, and I mean, this one literally went from 86 to 101. This is probably an example. The house that I did last year, it was in the millions, the $1 million range. We did get a good reduction. Say it was from like, close to 1.2 down to 1 point something. And she literally got like $3 back or something. So that's how you can see how that might come to play. And then we'll do Milton. Again, Milton's first, just to show you that one. They also tax for themselves. So we have this tax bill from 2022. Their Fulton operating, you can see there's floating exemptions here. This assessment went practically doubled. I mean, that's more than doubled almost. It went from 704 to 1.5. So this one we might appeal just because it's ridiculous. But I'm going to show you how it doesn't actually make much of a difference when it comes to the actual taxes that are being owed. So this one went from 171 to 177 for Fulton operating, and that was 1,522 to 1,575. So that was an increase of maybe $50. The Fulton schools, you can see the homestead exemption here. The 2022 value was 199, and it only went up to 205. So that was 3,440 to 3,545. Those are baked in, like those values are not going to change even with a reduction. What can change is the Fulton bond. So the Fulton bond last year here, it looks like it was about 56. So that has gone up to 122. So maybe there's 20 or 30 or $40 worth to be saved there with a reduction. Milton is, again, because they do their own taxes collections, they are not, their homestead exemption is not included here, but it is not going to be 27,042. Here's an example of the Milton's prior tax bill. You can see those, they do include their floating exemption. Last year it was a 171,593. I would expect this to increase by 3% to say like 176, and multiplied by last year's millage rate, about 828. There is a green space bond here that's pretty affordable. It looks like it was 127 last year. I don't know if okay, so I think I estimated the bond here. So even with the 613, it's 277. So maybe there's $50 or so to be saved for the green space bond. But the only values that are going to be affected by this one are the bonds. The Fulton operating, the Fulton County schools, and the city taxes are baked in at that 3% increase. So if you're still interested in submitting an appeal or getting a freeze, happy to help you do that. But I just want you to be very cognizant of what the chances are that you will save any significant dollars. And you can certainly do it just for the sake of that if you'd like to.